Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. We start tonight with more on the tragic fatal shooting in Tumbler Ridge in northern British Columbia that took the lives of 9 people. People are saying they may never have a motive as questions are being asked about the 18-year-old shooter and the 2 firearms recovered at the school. Her gun license had been revoked, but a petition by the family was approved and the weapons were returned. CTV's Judy Trin on the investigation and whether Canada's gun laws need to change.
This is the home of the shooter, Jesse Van Rutselaar, and the starting point of the killing spree. The 18-year-old killed her mother, Jennifer Jacobs, and a younger brother. The RCMP say they were called to the house multiple times.
We have a history of police attendance at the family residence. Some of those calls were related to mental health issues.
Very few people living in rural communities appreciate the extent to which having guns in the home with a mentally ill youth is a risk.
At the second crime scene, police say they recovered a long gun and a modified handgun from the school. On Facebook, Strang posted this photo of 6 long guns in 2024. She wrote, "It's time to take them out for target practice." Police say they had previously seized the firearms, but later returned them to the owner.
I can say that at a later point in time, the lawful owner of those firearms petitioned for those firearms to be returned.
In cases where mental health issues arise, police can seize firearms and seek a court order preventing gun possession in the name of public safety.
The question is, why was the prohibition application, which was begun by the seizure, why was that not followed through on?
To get the guns returned, Strang would have had to go to court. Police have not said why they gave back the guns.
This should be information that is readily available to the public, and it should be information that we can look at, because it's only with sort of that information can we see if mistakes were made.
The RCMP say they're continuing to investigate these questions. Meanwhile, statistics show that there is a higher rate of violent crime involving guns in rural communities than in cities. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
A new university is set to open in Nunavut in 2030. Its supporters say it will offer a whole range of opportunities to Inuit youth that many did not think possible before. APTN's Fraser Needham has that story.
Riley Winters says the opportunity to take courses in her traditional language was something she missed out on at university.
I mean, it would be amazing just to have the opportunity to attend post-secondary in community in your homeland. I think it's also another to be able to learn your language, to learning at a place of higher education like that. I personally didn't have the opportunity to learn my language at university, but now this is a possibility.
Winters was speaking at an event in Ottawa earlier this week, where officials announced that the new Nunavut University will be located in Arkvat. Winters' family is from Nunavut, and she attended a post-secondary school in Newfoundland. Kivalliq Inuit Association President Kono Tatatni shares Winters' same thoughts.
For young people, this university represents opportunity that we never had. The opportunity to pursue higher education while staying close to home and family, to language and to culture. It represents the opportunity to build careers in fields grounded in Inuit knowledge and Inuit kawimayatokangit. Also, while opening doors to new pathways across Canada and the world.
The university will have 3 different faculties. One will feature courses on Inuit self-determination, another will train health and education workers, and the other will focus on teaching Inuktitut language. Inuit Taprit Kanatami President Nate Nobed says location has been the main barrier preventing Inuit people from attaining a post-secondary education.
I would not be in the role that I am in without university. And I'm sure there are many people in this room that would say the very same thing about where they are in their careers. That is not something that many Inuit have been able to achieve. Breaking down this barrier, giving Inuit more opportunities to achieve whatever it is that they want to do in their lives has everything to do with why we are pursuing this.
Nunavut Tungavik President Paul Ingoat adds the next generation of Inuit leadership will be able to attain the skills they need while remaining grounded in culture.
Inuit Nunavut University will be a place where you can learn while staying connected to your community, language, and culture. It will be a place of that nurtures confidence, pride, and leadership, and ensures that you are supported in ways that reflect Inuit ways of knowing and being.
Inuit Nunavut University will be the first Inuit-led university in Canada's Arctic. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Today, Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Rebecca Alty introduced what is being described as a self-government treaty with the Manitoba Métis Federation. In the House Thursday morning, it was actually Manitoba Member of Parliament Kevin Lamoureux who tabled the legislation called Bill C-21. It is described as the first self-government treaty made with the Métis government. According to a government release, the treaty does not include harvesting rights, land or land-related rights. Bill C-21 still needs to go to committee and be passed by both the House and Senate before becoming law. Meanwhile, the House of Commons Standing Committee on Indigenous Affairs continued its study of Bill S-2, which is Senate legislation to get rid of sex discrimination in the Indian Act, in particular on how Indian status is passed down to children. Right now, there is something called the second generation cutoff when it comes to passing down status. A Senate amendment proposes getting rid of the second generation cutoff. That issue was the topic of discussion this morning. Muskeg Lake Cree Nation Chief Kelly Wolf began the meeting with the Serenity Prayer, followed by 30 seconds of silence for the shooting victims in Tumbler Ridge and Kitigan-Zibi. Conservative Member of Parliament Billy Morin asked about the government's plan to delay amending the second generation cutoff. Witness Toronto Metropolitan University's Pam Palmater pointed out the Senate gave unanimous support to the amendment. Meanwhile, Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Grand Chief Kyra Wilson has a personal reason for wanting the House passing S2 quickly.
You know, I do have a child who continually talks about her connection or disconnection to her community. I'm registered with our nation, but my daughter is not. So there is this sense of disconnection. So it's very damaging to our families and to our children that are impacted by this second generation cutoff.
Why the resistance by ISK? Well, what's going on here? They've resisted this entire time with every amendment. Well, we know why. Because the government's position hasn't really changed. They're talking about the absorption of the Indian race into the general population. That's their objective. To continue until there's not a single Indian left in Canada.
To Saskatchewan now, where the Prince Albert Grand Council is getting a head start on this year's anticipated wildfire season. With 100 Fire Smart crew members deployed across Saskatchewan, they are working to reduce hazardous fuels and protect critical infrastructure. The crews are working on 11 wildfire mitigation projects in areas impacted by past fires, including Lac La Ronge, Timber Bay, and Cypress Hills. Projects include thinning dense forests, opening fire guards, and removing hazardous fuels. Priority is given to residential areas, schools, health centers, power lines, evacuation routes, and access corridors. Efforts also focus on preserving trap lines, harvesting areas, and culturally significant sites for Indigenous communities. Well, we're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can get in touch with us. If you have a story you'd like to share, you can send us an email to news@aptn.ca. You can read and watch our stories by going to our website, aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Time for a quick break, and then our Truth and Politics panel will be here to discuss comments made by the former leader of the BC Conservative Party. Stick around. Welcome back. The former leader of the Conservative Party of British Columbia is the latest right-leaning politician to be accused of spreading misinformation and fear-mongering about Indigenous land rights. According to reporting by our friends at the Tyee, Conservative MLA John Rustad told the packed house that Canada wouldn't exist without that partnership with First Nations, and equally, First Nations wouldn't exist without Canada. Our Truth and Politics panel is here for more on this. Jennifer Leywitz is the CEO of Pusquaw Strategies, and Negon Sinclair is a columnist with the Winnipeg Free Press. Good to see you both. Negon, we'll start with you and your thoughts on what BC Conservative MLA John Rustad had to say in front of a packed house in Smithers.
I just got back from BC, and at times, I think I forget how in BC there's some of the most interesting, heated discussions around Indigenous rights that's happening in the country right now. I encourage anybody to check out what's happening. Former Conservative leader John Rustad, who's now kind of thinking about the leadership again, came out and spoke about everything is about this passage of Indigenous rights in British Columbia. And in last December, there was a judge that decided that Indigenous rights is legally enforceable, which technically is why you pass a law in the first place. Apparently, for Conservatives in BC, however, this means the rubber's hit the road, and this means that we have to somehow repeal the bill, or we have to then just stop the bill outright. And Premier David Eby from British Columbia is talking about amending the bill to make the bill much less impactful and certainly not legally enforceable. The question is who will break? What will happen? And in BC, John Rustad starts saying egregious things like First Nations only exist because Canada allows them to or exists. Or my whole point is that it's a bunch of political game playing, but it really comes with some real life impacts because it's really firing up a lot of anti-Indigenous sentiment in the province.
Going to get to a number of those things that you mentioned there, Negon, but Jen, first, the headline of this story, I feel like might be a bit misleading. He did preface what he said by saying Canada wouldn't exist without the partnership with First Nations, but still received some boos, apparently, according to the report. What are your thoughts?
I think kind of exactly what Negon was saying. And I also think that there's a lot of conversation around First Nations, treaty rights, and even the relationship with Indigenous people in this country in general up on the rise in British Columbia. Obviously, over the last, several months, this has been becoming more and more of a contentious issue. But I think, I've been seeing a lot of conversation stemming from John Rustad's comments. It wasn't just necessarily what he said. It's what everyone is talking about from those comments being now publicized. And I think it's silly to say that, First Nations wouldn't exist without Canada or even the other way around. We've existed long before Canada did, the Confederation of 1867. It's new compared to, Indigenous nations that have governed and made laws and traded and all of those things on these lands since time immemorial. So it's just really frustrating that we keep getting this sentiment over and over again of this type of dependency and language that centers us around being so heavily dependent on our relationship with Canada, when really Canada did not create us and Canada is not responsible for our survival to this day. The only thing really that Canada did was bring in colonial governance that reclassified and constrained our people and our government systems. But I think that relationship needs to go back to that nation-to-nation relationship and stop talking about whether or not we would exist without Canada, because we would.
Right. Negon, the meeting was about, like you mentioned, BC's Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, or DRIPA. The Conservative Party, it passed unanimous at the time in the legislature. Now the Conservative Party of BC wants to repeal it. What's at stake here?
Well, I mean, this is really a big test for the country. This isn't just about British Columbia. This is actually sort of a larger test on the federal government's seeking to bring Canadian laws into harmony within the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Bill C-15 passed with in the sort of ending days of Justin Trudeau's government. This is a moment in which the country really has to say, okay, are we going to take Indigenous rights seriously? Are we going to employ it in law? And most markedly is that when the law is broken, which Canada frequently does, especially the private and the public spheres, when companies want to build projects, do we really adequately involve, affirm, fulfill the legal obligation to consult First Nations? Are those Indigenous rights considered? Are they part of that consultation? Are they done in such a way that First Nations feel included? And if we just have parties who say, well, we may pass thing on a Thursday, but next week on a Monday, we're just going to, when we realize that this is actually going to mean something, we just repeal it, then why did we do it in the first place? Like, why did the country even investigate the idea that you could encompass Indigenous rights within a provincial framework? The whole point is that we have to have bravery. If we're going to change this country to make it just, to live up to the very heady words that Canada claims to be a place of justice, then we have to act justly. And we have to act in such a way that we act differently than the past. And that means that we need Canadians, and politicians in particular who represent those Canadians, to be held to account, to be a higher standard, and most importantly, try to build a country that's better than we inherited.
Whether or not the government of BC has actually lived up to what was hailed as groundbreaking legislation, I guess is a matter for a whole other panel. But Jennifer, I guess just your thoughts on what repealing DRIPA could mean.
Oh, I'm not sure. I think that we have a lot of work ahead of us, and what's going on in British Columbia still confuses me. And I hate that it feels like every week we have something new that's coming out that we have to try to identify with different bodies that are trying to take us in different directions, and our rights are being impacted. And, I know that this week and next week there's conversation already back on the table on S2, and I know that has nothing to do with this, but it just seems like there's constantly, provinces and municipalities and the feds trying to redefine our relationships and trying to redefine our rights, and it's becoming really frustrating.
Indeed. We're going to talk about threats that were made to the National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations over on the podcast, but thanks to you both for being here today.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks.
Still to come tonight, previews of this week's episode of APTN Investigates and tonight's episode of Nation to Nation. Stick around. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Eldon from Grassy Narrows First Nation in Treaty 3 territory shared this calm view of dusk as seen over his community. Thanks for sharing, Eldon. With Valentine's just around the corner, send a picture of your sweetheart. Hopefully we will get enough photos to use every day next week for our photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, plenty of sun, +1 in Fredericton, 3 above for Halifax. -9 for Kuujjuaq, cloudy and 2 below for Nain. -5 for Montreal, cloudy and 6 below for Chibougamau. Cloudy and 0 for Sault Ste. Marie, -4 for Ottawa. 3 below for Thunder Bay and Sioux Lookout. In northern Manitoba, -3 for God's Lake and the Paw. -5 for Winnipeg, 3 below for Barons River. -1 for Regina and North Battleford. 2 for Meadow Lake and Ronge. In northern Alberta, -1 in High Level, 3 above for Grand Prairie. 2 for Edmonton, 7 for Medicine Hat. 7 for Vancouver and Victoria, 3 in Kamloops. 0 for Prince George and Fort Nelson. -24 for Old Crow, 5 below for Whitehorse. -14 for Yellowknife and Trout Lake. 39 below for Sax Harbor, -34 for Pawlatuck. -26 for Chesterfield and Whale Cove, 41 below in Cambridge Bay. -31 in Arctic Bay, 32 below in Igloo Lake. Over to our Ottawa studio now, where Nation to Nation host Karen Pugliese tells us what issues she's tackling tonight.
Coming up on Nation to Nation, from Moscow to Washington, what happens when democracy begins to slip? Russian journalists and Indigenous activists who've seen freedom erode in Russia sound the alarm about what they're seeing in the U.S. That's coming up in just a few minutes.
Thanks, Karen. APTN Investigates returns this week with an all-new episode. Reporter Brittany Guillot looks into the mystery surrounding the disappearance of 25-year-old Joshua Francis Soto. Soto vanished from his family's property on Whitefish Lake First Nation in northern Alberta in the spring of 2025. Weeks prior to his disappearance, he had won $1 million on a scratch ticket. Here's a preview.
Listen to me very carefully. We're going to make our way down through this cut line. If anybody sees anything or whatever, shout. You got that? So if everybody's ready, let's go. All right.
It's the first heavy snowfall of the season in Whitefish Lake, Alberta.
10 yards apart from each other.
And Eliza Daniels is leading the search for her 25-year-old grandson, Joshua Soto.
Okay, you guys ready? Let's go. They have searched several areas, regions on the other side of this property and further down this way, as to my understanding.
According to the RCMP, Joshua was last seen on May 5th, 2025. The details of his disappearance are unusual.
Alberta RCMP are asking the public for any tips about a First Nations man missing for more than 5 months in the northeastern part of the province. Weeks prior to Soto's disappearance, he won $1 million on a scratch-and-win ticket.
To better understand what really happened here, APTN Investigates traveled to Whitefish Lake, a Cree reserve in northern Alberta. Ranches, cattle, rolling hills. It's a place where people know the land. And they know each other. And when someone doesn't come home, the absence reverberates throughout the community.
You can catch APTN Investigates Into the Night, airing this Saturday on APTN, and Brittany will join us here tomorrow night to talk more about the documentary. And congrats to Brittany and Tom on their recent award. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Thursday. For more, visit our website, aptnnews.ca, or our APTN News YouTube page. Creason will be here at 1 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow with your first look at Friday's news. I'm Dennis Ward, Marcy Miigwech. Thanks for being with us. Stay tuned. Karen is up next with Nation to Nation. We'll see you back here tomorrow.